Most people learn about money from school, social media, or watching others chase shiny things. But almost no one is taught the rules of wealth, the quiet, often invisible principles that make the difference between staying broke and building something lasting. You see people buying bigger houses, luxury cars, and overpriced status symbols, and you assume that's success. But what if I told you those behaviors are often signs that someone is falling behind financially, not getting ahead? That's what this video is about, exposing the rules that most people never hear until it's far too late to apply them. And if you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but still not moving forward, this might be the shift you've been waiting for. Welcome to the channel, where we break down timeless financial strategies used by the quietly successful so you can build your freedom, your way. Today's video is titled, The Wealth Rules They Never Taught You. And trust me, these aren't tips you've heard 1,000 times. These are deep behavioral shifts, simple, but not easy. I'll walk you through the mindset traps most people fall into and how real millionaires avoid them. We'll explore the myths that keep people stuck, the systems that actually work, and the values that drive wealth for decades, not just for a season. Along the way, you'll uncover gripping financial tales from history and hard-hitting truths. Some may sting, but they'll wake you up. And if you're serious about building long-term wealth and want more content like this every week, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Because once you know the real rules, everything changes. Let's get into the first one. And it might just challenge everything you've believed about what wealthy really looks like. Rich equals flash. Let's get one thing straight. If someone feels the need to constantly prove they're rich, chances are they're not. In his book, Stop Acting Rich, Thomas J. Stanley opens with a truth that's hard to unsee. Most real millionaires don't look like millionaires. They're not rolling through town in Lamborghinis or dripping in designer labels. In fact, they're often living in average neighborhoods, driving unassuming cars and wearing watches that cost less than a weekend hotel stay. Why? Because they value freedom over flexing. They care more about owning their time than owning status symbols. Here's a rule you won't find on Instagram. Looking rich is expensive. Being rich is boring. Stanley calls this the big hat, no cattle problem. People want to appear wealthy, so they spend like it. But all that spending leaves them asset poor and stress rich. It's lifestyle inflation in disguise. It's how someone can be making six figures but still living paycheck to paycheck. The irony? You've got a leased BMW, $10,000 in credit card debt, and a Gucci belt, but no emergency fund. Congratulations. You're aspirational, not affluent. Real millionaires? They're quietly stacking. They live on less than they earn, invest the difference, and let time do the heavy lifting. They don't need validation from strangers because they've already validated themselves with discipline. Here comes the game changer. Before you make your next treat-yourself purchase, ask one question. Am I building my future or borrowing from it? Because every status symbol you finance is a delay to your freedom. And the truth is, most of what we label as wealth is just well-packaged debt. Up next, the rule that exposes the secret brands and marketers are dying to keep from you. Because once you do, the illusion shatters, and so does their business model. Now let's talk about one of the sneakiest financial traps hiding in plain sight, the brand illusion. You know the one, the luxury watch that screams success, the logo-covered shoes, the designer bag that costs more than some people's rent. These symbols are everywhere, and the loudest financial lie they whisper is this: if you wear this, you're winning. But according to author research in Stop Acting Rich, the opposite is often true. The more obsessed someone is with luxury labels, the less actual wealth they tend to have. Why? Because chasing brands is really about chasing identity. And identity purchased through spending is the most fragile kind of confidence. When you rely on a logo to feel valuable, your self-worth is at the mercy of every trend, drop, and algorithm. But millionaires? They aren't buying into that game. Stanley found that the wealthiest Americans often wear generic clothing, buy non-designer accessories, and drink $8 wine, not because they're cheap, but because they're clear on what matters. Let's throw in a little sarcasm, shall we? Sure, it totally makes sense to drop $400 on limited edition sneakers while you've got $0 in your investment account and no emergency fund. Because who needs compound interest when you've got clout, right? Here's the truth most people never hear. Every dollar you spend to look rich is a dollar you delay becoming rich. Brands are built to sell you emotion, status, security, power. But none of that comes from a receipt. It comes from ownership, clarity, and discipline. So the next time you feel the urge to drop serious cash just to look the part, ask yourself, am I dressing up for others or showing up for my future? Because one of those builds real wealth and the other just photographs well. Rule 3, status buys you nothing of value. Here's a hard truth most people spend their whole lives trying to ignore. Status buys you attention, but it rarely buys you freedom. And the moment your financial decisions are driven by how you want to be perceived, you've already surrendered your autonomy. In Stop Acting Rich, Thomas J. Stanley exposes the silent addiction behind lifestyle inflation, aspirational spending. The luxury home in the trendy zip code, the Rolex just because, the overpriced wine nobody actually enjoys, these aren't purchases rooted in logic. They're fueled by the need to look successful, even if that means sacrificing long-term stability. What most people don't realize is that the chase for status is a treadmill with no finish line. The moment you catch up to one trend, another takes its place. And so you upgrade again and again, until suddenly you're earning more than ever and feeling poorer than ever. The irony? The people trying hardest to look wealthy often feel the most pressure to maintain that illusion. It's not just financially exhausting, it's emotionally draining. Let's hit it with a brutal analogy. It's like running a race where everyone's sprinting in circles and no one's actually getting anywhere. That's what happens when you serve your ego instead of your goals. Nothing like a good dose of irony to keep things interesting, shall we? You're drowning in debt, can't sleep at night, and secretly dread every credit card statement. But hey, your neighbors think you've made it, right? Meanwhile, real millionaires? They're not performing. They're preserving. They're driving Camrys, not McLarens. They're drinking regular coffee, not imported champagne. And they're sleeping better than anyone chasing the next shiny thing. Here's the takeaway. If your spending is based on optics instead of outcomes, you're not growing wealth. You're staging it. And eventually, the curtain falls. Moving into the next of the wealth rules. They never taught you this is the habit so unsexy, so overlooked that most people write it off. Yet it's the very engine that builds true, lasting financial freedom where no one's watching. If you think real wealth feels like a private jet and daily dopamine hits, think again. True wealth isn't exciting. It's repetitive, it's disciplined, it's quiet. That's why most people miss it. In Stop Acting Rich, Stanley highlights one of the most overlooked truths in finance. Wealthy people follow routines that look boring from the outside, but those very routines are what build lasting financial strength. They budget. They track expenses. They invest regularly. They ignore market noise, and they do it for years, without applause, without hype, and without burnout. Why? Because for them, financial independence is the ultimate prize. Not status, not sparkle, just control. And that control comes from embracing the unsexy actions most people scroll past. The millionaire next door isn't binging crypto TikToks. They're auto-investing into index funds and going back to their lives. Stanley tells the story of people living in modest neighborhoods, driving reliable cars, and shopping at Costco. Not because they have to, but because they know those habits protect their future. Real millionaires don't perform for the world. They build behind the scenes. And when things get boring, that's when they double down. Think of building wealth like growing a tree. You plant, you water, you wait. You don't dig it up every month to see if it sprouted. You trust the process. And eventually the tree grows big enough to shelter generations. But here's where most people blow it. They want the fireworks without the foundation, so they abandon the system when it gets repetitive. They chase novelty over results, and that's the trap. Because real wealth? It isn't earned in moments, it's earned in patterns, and those patterns are boring by design. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far and want more topics like this, comment the word "more" so I know. Rule 5, the wealthy don't chase money, they chase freedom. Let's stop and ask a question almost no one considers. What's the actual point of wealth? If your answer is to buy more stuff, you've already missed it. Because the wealthy aren't chasing possessions, they're chasing freedom. In Stop Acting Rich, Stanley drives this idea home again and again. Real millionaires don't care about impressing strangers. They care about owning their time. That's the true flex, autonomy. The ability to say no to what doesn't serve you and yes to what actually matters. Take the example of a man Stanley profiled who had a net worth of over $5 million. He drove a Toyota. He lived in a quiet neighborhood. He wore polos from Target and bought groceries in bulk, but here's what made him powerful. He hadn't had a boss in over 20 years. He set his own hours, worked on his own terms, and never had to fake enthusiasm for another pointless Zoom call. His life was simple, but it was his. Now compare that to someone earning $300K a year but chained to a job they hate, drowning in debt, and stuck in a lifestyle they can't afford to leave. That's not wealth. That's a performance piece, and the ticket price is your peace of mind. Here's the uncommon insight. Time is the real currency of wealth. The rich don't trade time for money. They use money to buy back time. They skip the showy purchases, not because they can't afford them, but because they know the cost of distraction. Every unnecessary dollar spent is a future hour sold. That's not just financial logic, that's life design. So ask yourself this: would you rather look successful for 5 seconds or live free for decades? Because the rich have already made their choice. All right, let's raise the stakes, because this next truth will challenge the myth that earning more is always the answer. Let's talk about why you can't out-earn poor habits. Let's make something crystal clear. A high income does not guarantee wealth. It might look impressive on paper, but income is just a number. Wealth is a behavior. In Stop Acting Rich, Thomas J. Stanley shares an uncomfortable truth. Most high earners are not financially independent. Why? Because they confuse earning more with winning more, and they never fix the habits that keep them stuck. It's why professional athletes, celebrities, and doctors can make millions and still go broke. Let's take two people. One earns $70,000 a year, saves 25% of their income, lives simply, and invests regularly. The other earns $250,000, spends $260,000, and finances their lifestyle with credit. Which one is wealthy? It's not the one on the magazine cover. Stanley puts it bluntly. It's not how much you make, it's how much you keep and what you do with it. Here's the trap. Most people believe that more money will solve their financial problems. But all it does is scale their dysfunction. If you're disorganized with $3,000, you'll be disorganized with $30,000. And if you don't know where your money is going at $50K, you definitely won't know at $500K. Income can accelerate growth or accelerate destruction. It all depends on your habits. So let's inject some sarcasm. Of course, it makes perfect sense to spend $4,000 a month on luxury upgrades while saving nothing, because clearly your future self is going to win the lottery, right? Here's the rule most people never want to face. You can't out-earn poor habits. Discipline isn't optional. It's foundational. Wealthy people automate their savings, track their spending, and build systems to protect their money. Not because they're obsessed, but because they've seen what happens when you don't. Moving forward, let's talk about the final shift, the one that separates performative wealth from lasting peace. Real millionaires don't chase likes, followers, or validation. They chase alignment. And that's a word most people ignore because it doesn't sparkle and you can't post it on Instagram. In Stop Acting Rich, Stanley points out a powerful insight. The people who obsess over appearing rich are often compensating for a lack of inner clarity. Meanwhile, those who are truly wealthy have already defined what success means, and they're quietly building lives that reflect it. Think about it. How many times have you seen someone upgrade their car, house, or wardrobe, not out of need, but out of pressure? That's not ambition. That's anxiety in disguise. It's a trap, building a life that looks good, but doesn't feel good. The applause seekers are always one purchase away from feeling enough, and it never ends. More clothes, more followers, more debt. And for what? A moment of admiration from people who don't pay your bills. Let's flip the perspective. Real millionaires live with meaning. They don't care who notices their watch because they're too busy noticing their time. They're not on social media flexing their new toy. They're with their kids, walking the dog, or sleeping peacefully because their finances are in order. Here's the uncommon truth. The most powerful people are often invisible. They're not chasing applause. They're building lives that don't require it. And that's what makes their wealth sustainable. It's not about income. It's about intention. It's not about proving anything. It's about peace. So here's your question. Are you spending to impress or designing your freedom? Because only one of those leads to real wealth. Let's bring it all home. You've just seen 7 of the most important wealth principles that no one teaches, but every successful person quietly follows. The truth is, most people don't fail because they're lazy. They fail because they're imitating the wrong version of success. Flash, not freedom, applause, not purpose, but now you know better. First, stop mistaking image for income. The loudest lifestyle is often built on the weakest financial foundation. Looking rich is a distraction. Being rich is a discipline. Start questioning every status symbol. Ask whether it moves you forward or just burns future freedom. Second, stop chasing brands and start chasing clarity. Wealth isn't found at the mall. It's found in your behavior. If it's not aligned with your goals, it's in your way. Third, recognize that time, not income, is the real currency. Use money to buy back your time, not to prove your worth. The people who win the long game are the ones who get that early. Fourth, build systems. Automation beats willpower every time. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be consistent. If you're saving $10 a week, that's momentum. If you're investing in boring index funds every month, that's leverage. Fifth, simplify. The wealthy aren't chasing dopamine, they're chasing peace. And finally, protect your purpose. Don't spend to prove. Don't work to impress. Build a life so aligned with what matters to you that no one else's opinion even registers. You don't need permission to live this way. Just a starting point. And that starting point is right now. If you found value today, I highly recommend watching my next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want more deep dive content like this, comment more below. I'm reading everyone. Until next time, stay consistent, stay patient, and stay winning. See you in the next one, Money Magician.